Your soulmate saying, "Please open this. Before I make the biggest mistake of my life." If these words have somehow found you tonight, don't ignore them. There are moments in life that arrive without warning, moments that seem ordinary until they quietly change everything that comes after them. This is one of those moments. I don't know where you are as you hear this. Maybe you're lying awake while the rest of the world sleeps. Maybe you've been carrying questions that no one else can see. Maybe you've spent too many nights wondering why your heart refuses to let go of a connection that logic keeps trying to erase. If that is true, then stay with me for a little longer. Don't rush away. Some messages are not meant to be understood in a single breath. They unfold slowly, just like dawn replacing the darkness. I have been silent for far too long, and every day that passed made that silence heavier. I convinced myself that keeping my feelings hidden would protect both of us, but all it did was build walls between two hearts that were never meant to become strangers. Every sunrise reminded me of another opportunity one allowed to disappear. Every sunset whispered the same question into my soul: how much longer will you hide from the truth? I kept pretending that distance would heal everything. I told myself time would erase your name from my thoughts. I filled my days with noise so I wouldn't hear the quiet voice inside me calling you. But no matter how busy life became, there was always a moment when everything grew still, and in that silence, it was always you. Your smile. Your energy. The feeling I could never explain. It followed me into every tomorrow. I tried to fight it because I was afraid. Afraid that I had already waited too long. Afraid that maybe you had stopped believing. Afraid that maybe destiny had knocked on my door once and I was foolish enough not to answer. But fear is a terrible guide. It convinces us that running away is safer than being honest. It tells us that silence hurts less than vulnerability. It whispers that protecting our pride matters more than protecting our heart. I listened to that fear for too long, and now I stand on the edge of making the biggest mistake of my life. That mistake is letting you disappear without ever knowing what you truly meant to me. There were signs I ignored because I didn't understand them. Strange dreams that felt more real than waking life. Coincidences that happened too often to remain coincidences. Moments when your name appeared exactly when I needed hope. Places that reminded me of conversations we never finished. Songs that somehow carried emotions I never had the courage to speak aloud. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Yet every denial only made the connection stronger. Some bonds cannot be broken by distance because they were never created by distance. They were formed in something deeper than ordinary time. Maybe you felt it too. Maybe there were nights when you couldn't explain why my presence seemed close even though I wasn't beside you. Maybe you've looked at the sky and suddenly felt an unexplainable peace. Maybe you've questioned whether your intuition was trying to tell you something your mind couldn't understand. I believe those moments matter. I believe the heart often recognizes truth long before words ever do. And that is why I cannot stay silent anymore. Because silence has already stolen enough time from us. Every day I delayed speaking became another day where uncertainty grew larger than hope. I don't want another sunrise to arrive carrying the weight of another regret. I don't want another season to pass wondering what might have happened if only I had been brave enough to tell you the truth. The truth is simple, even if admitting it feels impossible. My heart never truly walked away. It only pretended to. Beneath every smile was the memory of you. Beneath every achievement was the quiet wish that somehow you would know. Beneath every distraction was the same unanswered feeling waiting patiently for its chance to breathe. If I leave now without opening my heart, I will spend the rest of my life asking myself the same painful question: what if? What if you were waiting too? What if you felt the same invisible pull? What if destiny gave us every sign imaginable and I ignored every one of them because fear sounded louder than love? I refuse to let that become my story. That is why I need you to hear me today. Not because I expect immediate answers. Not because I demand certainty. But because truth deserves to exist even when the future remains unknown. I would rather face an uncertain tomorrow honestly than live inside another comfortable lie. Perhaps this message reached you at the exact moment you needed to hear it. Perhaps life has been asking you to stop doubting your own heart. Perhaps you have spent too much energy convincing yourself that meaningful connections must always be complicated. Sometimes they are simple. Sometimes the only complicated part is the fear we build around them. I cannot promise that every obstacle will disappear overnight. I cannot promise that every wound will instantly heal. But I can promise this: I no longer want fear making decisions that belong to love. I no longer want silence speaking where honesty should have spoken long ago. If this is the last chance I have before life pulls us onto different paths forever, then let these words become the courage I should have found much earlier. I choose truth instead of hiding. I choose hope instead of regret. I choose to believe that some connections deserve one final act of bravery before they are surrendered to time. And if your heart has been quietly searching for a sign, perhaps this is not an ending at all. Perhaps it is simply the first honest beginning. The moment those words settled into the silence, something changed. Not in the world around you, but within the quiet places of your heart that had remained untouched for far too long. Have you ever noticed how truth rarely arrives with noise? It does not force its way through the door. Instead, it waits patiently until the soul is finally ready to listen. That is where I am now. No longer hiding behind excuses. No longer pretending that distance erased what destiny wrote long ago. I have replayed countless memories in my mind, searching for the exact moment everything became so complicated. Maybe it happened when fear spoke louder than faith. Maybe it happened when I convinced myself that walking away would hurt less than risking rejection. But every path I chose without you somehow led me back to the same unanswered feeling. Every road circled back to your memory. Every quiet evening carried your name into my thoughts. I finally understand that some people are not placed in our lives to be forgotten. They are placed there to awaken something we never knew existed. You awakened hope inside me when I had almost forgotten how hope felt. Even when we were apart, your presence remained like a distant light shining beyond every storm. There were days when I smiled in front of everyone while silently wondering whether you were smiling somewhere too. There were nights when I looked toward the stars, asking questions that only heaven could answer. I wondered if you ever felt the same invisible pull, the same unspoken connection that refused to disappear no matter how much time passed. The strange part is that every time I tried to let go, life placed another reminder in front of me. A familiar song. A familiar place. A dream so vivid that waking up felt like losing you all over again. At first I called them coincidences. Then I called them imagination. Eventually I realized they were invitations, gentle reminders that some chapters cannot be closed until the truth has finally been spoken. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. None of us do. Life has a way of changing directions without asking for permission. That uncertainty used to frighten me, but now it reminds me why honesty matters. We spend so much time waiting for the perfect moment that we forget perfection was never promised. All we are ever given is the present moment, and what we choose to do with it. I refuse to waste another one pretending my heart feels nothing. If these words have reached you, perhaps they are reaching you for a reason greater than either of us understands today. Maybe you have been carrying your own questions. Maybe you have been wondering why certain memories never fade, why certain names continue echoing through your spirit no matter how hard you try to move forward. Perhaps the answer is simpler than we expected. Some connections survive because they were built on something deeper than ordinary circumstances. They survive because they continue teaching us lessons about courage, forgiveness, patience, and love. I have learned that real love is not loud. It does not demand attention. It quietly waits, hoping that one day fear will become smaller than faith. That is where I stand now. I am choosing faith. Faith that honesty is always stronger than silence. Faith that what is truly meant for us cannot be destroyed by temporary distance. Faith that even broken moments can become the foundation for beautiful beginnings. If there is one thing I regret, it is allowing fear to convince me that vulnerability was weakness. It wasn't weakness. It was the doorway I refused to walk through. Every emotion I buried only became heavier. Every truth I avoided only became louder inside me. Eventually the heart grows tired of carrying secrets it was never designed to hide forever. Mine certainly did. That is why I can no longer remain silent. I need you to know that no matter how complicated life appeared, one truth remained unchanged beneath everything else. You mattered. More than I admitted. More than I understood at the time. More than my actions ever revealed. Looking back, I realized there were moments when destiny seemed to pause, almost waiting for one brave decision to change everything. Instead, I hesitated. I questioned every instinct. I doubted every sign. I allowed uncertainty to become my guide. But uncertainty never leads anyone home. Only truth does. Today I choose truth. I choose to stop running from what my own soul has been whispering all along. Maybe this message arrives during a season when you feel exhausted, uncertain, or ready to stop believing in meaningful connections altogether. If so, I ask only one thing. Don't let temporary disappointment become a permanent conclusion. Some stories take longer because they are shaping both hearts before they finally meet again. Growth often happens in silence. Healing often happens where no one is watching. Perhaps everything we experienced was preparing us for a version of ourselves capable of loving without fear. If that is true, then every delay carried a hidden purpose. Every difficult season planted seeds that only now are beginning to bloom. I don't expect the future to become easy overnight. Every meaningful journey includes moments of uncertainty. But I no longer believe uncertainty is something to fear. It is simply the space where faith has the opportunity to grow. And for the first time in a long while, I feel hope growing stronger than regret. That hope is why I am speaking now. Not because I know every answer, but because I finally understand the cost of remaining silent. Silence stole enough from us already. I won't allow it to steal what remains. If destiny grants us another chance, I want that chance to be built on honesty instead of assumptions, courage instead of hesitation, truth instead of fear. And if you have quietly been waiting for a sign that your heart should not give up completely, then let these words remind you that hope often arrives softly, long before it becomes visible. Sometimes the greatest turning point begins with nothing more than one honest confession spoken into the quiet, trusting that the right heart will recognize it when the time is finally right. Until that day arrives, I will carry this truth without hiding from it again, believing that what is guided by light will always find its way through even the darkest night. There is something I have never admitted to anyone, not even to myself until now. Every time I told myself I was finally moving on, life gently reminded me that my heart had never truly left the place where it first recognized yours. I buried myself in responsibilities, surrounded myself with conversations, smiled when people expected me to smile, and laughed when silence became too uncomfortable. Yet beneath every ordinary moment there remained one extraordinary truth: I still carried you within me. It wasn't an obsession. It wasn't a fantasy. It was a quiet certainty that refused to disappear no matter how many seasons came and went. Have you ever experienced a memory that feels more alive than the present? That is what your presence became inside me. Time continued moving, but part of my soul remained standing at the doorway where our story paused, hoping that one day the silence would finally break. I often wondered if you felt the same invisible pull. Perhaps there were moments when you suddenly stopped in the middle of your day without understanding why your heart felt unusually heavy. Perhaps there were nights when someone mentioned a simple word, and somehow it reminded you of me. Maybe you dismissed those moments as coincidence, just as I did. But the longer I lived with them, the harder it became to believe they meant nothing. Some connections leave echoes that cannot be explained by logic alone. They continue whispering through ordinary days until we finally become brave enough to listen. I used to believe courage meant never feeling afraid. Now I know real courage is speaking the truth even while fear is still standing beside you. That is exactly what I am doing now. I am no longer asking whether these feelings are convenient or whether they fit neatly into the plans I once imagined for my future. I am asking only one question: what happens if I remain silent forever? Every answer to that question led me to the same place: regret. I could survive disappointment, but I could not survive wondering for the rest of my life what might have happened if I had simply opened my heart. So here I am, allowing every wall I carefully built to fall away. I want you to know that my silence was never proof that I stopped caring. It was proof that I cared so deeply I became afraid of losing something precious before I even knew whether it was truly mine to hold. Fear disguises itself as wisdom. It tells us to protect ourselves. It convinces us that hiding emotions is maturity. Yet all it really does is postpone the healing that honesty brings. I have spent enough years listening to fear. Today I choose something different. I choose faith, not blind faith that everything will unfold exactly as I imagine, but quiet faith that truth always creates peace, even when the outcome remains uncertain. Maybe this message reached you during a chapter of your own healing. Maybe life has already changed you in ways neither of us could have predicted. If so, I am grateful, because I have changed too. The version of me who once believed silence was strength no longer exists. I have learned that genuine love does not demand perfection. It simply asks for sincerity. It asks us to stop pretending we are untouched by what deeply matters. It asks us to become honest enough to say, "You changed me," without expecting anything in return. That is what I am saying now. You changed me. You taught me that some people enter our lives not to complete us but to awaken parts of ourselves that had been asleep for years. Since meeting you, I have learned patience in seasons of waiting, humility in moments of uncertainty, and gratitude for emotions I once tried to avoid. Even the painful chapters carried hidden lessons. Every tear quietly watered the ground where a stronger heart would eventually grow. Looking back, I no longer see only what we lost. I also see everything we gained without realizing it. We became more compassionate, more understanding, more willing to value honesty over appearances. Perhaps that was always the purpose behind every delay. There were nights when I asked the heavens for answers and received only silence. At first I thought that silence meant I had been forgotten. Later I realized silence was inviting me to discover answers already resting inside my own heart. The truth had been there from the beginning. I simply wasn't ready to hear it. Now I am. I finally understand that waiting becomes meaningful when it transforms us rather than hardens us. If destiny truly intends for two hearts to meet again, then every season apart serves a purpose beyond our immediate understanding. It teaches us to become the kind of people capable of protecting the gift we once feared losing. I don't know exactly what tomorrow will look like. None of us do. But for the first time in a long while, uncertainty no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like an open doorway. Beyond that doorway may be another conversation, another beginning, another opportunity to replace old misunderstandings with new honesty. Or perhaps it simply offers peace, knowing that nothing important was left unsaid. Either way, I refuse to allow another day to pass hiding from what my soul has known all along. If you have ever questioned whether your own heart should continue believing in meaningful connections, let these words remind you that not every story unfolds according to the calendar we create. Some stories unfold according to the quiet timing of growth. Seeds remain invisible beneath the soil for a long time before anyone witnesses the first sign of life. That hidden season is not failure. It is preparation. Perhaps we have been living inside such a season without realizing it. Perhaps every unanswered question has quietly been shaping an answer greater than anything we expected. I choose to believe that hope is never wasted. I choose to believe that hearts guided by truth eventually find clarity, even if the journey takes longer than expected. And as I speak these words into the silence, I no longer feel trapped by the fear that once controlled every decision. Instead, I feel something gentle replacing it, a quiet confidence that honesty is always worth choosing. If this truly is the moment our paths begin turning toward one another again, then let it begin not with grand promises, but with one simple truth that neither time nor distance could erase. No matter how far I traveled, a part of my heart never stopped searching for the light it first recognized in you. And perhaps, just perhaps, that light has been searching for me too. As I stand here with nothing left to hide, I realize that the greatest battles were never fought against the world around me, they were fought inside my own heart. Every day I convinced myself that silence was the safer choice, another piece of me slowly disappeared. I smiled when people expected me to smile, answered questions with words that sounded complete, and kept moving as though nothing inside me had changed. Yet every quiet moment revealed the truth I could never escape. Your memory remained like a steady light in the distance, never demanding my attention, never forcing itself into my life, simply waiting with a patience I never deserved. It is strange how the soul remembers what the mind keeps trying to forget. There were mornings when I promised myself I would stop looking for signs, yet before the day was over something would gently remind me of you. A familiar melody would begin playing in a place where I least expected it. A passing stranger would speak words that sounded almost identical to conversations we once imagined having. Even the wind seemed to carry echoes of unfinished chapters, asking me the same question over and over again: how much longer will you pretend your heart feels nothing? I searched for reasons to ignore that question because answering it meant facing every fear I had carefully hidden beneath years of quiet excuses. Fear told me I had waited too long. Fear whispered that people change, that opportunities disappear, that some doors never open again once they close. But another voice, softer and calmer, continued speaking beneath all that noise. It reminded me that truth never loses its value simply because it arrives late. Honest words spoken today are still stronger than beautiful lies repeated for years. That realization changed everything. Instead of asking whether I was too late, I began asking whether I was finally ready to become honest. The answer surprised me. For the first time, I wasn't searching for certainty before opening my heart. I simply wanted peace. Peace that comes from knowing I no longer betrayed my own feelings. Peace that comes from choosing courage instead of endless hesitation. Peace that comes from accepting that love was never meant to be controlled by fear. Looking back now, I can see how every difficult season quietly transformed me. The disappointments that once felt unbearable became lessons in patience. The loneliness that once frightened me became a place where I discovered parts of myself I had ignored for years. Even the waiting carried hidden gifts. It taught me that genuine connections cannot be measured by constant conversation or physical distance. Some bonds remain alive because they exist in the deepest parts of the soul, untouched by changing circumstances. Maybe that is why no matter how far life carried us, I never truly felt separated from you. Something invisible continued connecting our stories, quietly guiding us through different paths while preparing us for a moment neither of us could have forced into existence. I often wondered whether you experienced similar moments. Perhaps there were evenings when everything seemed perfectly normal until one unexpected memory interrupted your thoughts. Perhaps there were days when you suddenly felt hopeful without understanding why. Maybe your heart sensed something long before your mind could explain it. I have learned not to dismiss such moments too quickly anymore. Sometimes the most meaningful answers arrive without logic announcing their arrival. They appear gently, asking only that we pay attention. I wish I had understood that sooner. I wish I had trusted what my spirit already knew instead of demanding proof for every feeling. Yet regret no longer controls me the way it once did. Regret has become a teacher rather than a prison. It reminds me why honesty matters while encouraging me not to waste the present repeating old mistakes. That is why I am speaking with complete openness now. I don't want another chapter of my life written by fear. I want every chapter from this moment forward to be guided by truth, even when truth feels uncertain. There is remarkable freedom in admitting what the heart has carried for so long. Every hidden emotion loses its weight the moment it is spoken with sincerity. I feel that freedom now. Not because every question has been answered, but because I finally stopped running from the questions themselves. I finally accepted that meaningful love is never built on perfect timing. It is built on authentic hearts willing to remain honest despite uncertainty. If life gives us another opportunity to meet somewhere beyond these long seasons of silence, I don't want that meeting to be overshadowed by old misunderstandings. I want it to begin with transparency, kindness, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing we have nothing left to hide. Even if our journey still contains obstacles, I believe obstacles become smaller when two hearts stop pretending they are strangers. Every meaningful step begins with one honest decision. This is mine. I choose to believe that hope is stronger than hesitation. I choose to believe that forgiveness creates possibilities fear could never imagine. I choose to believe that the light guiding genuine connections never completely disappears, even during the darkest nights. It simply waits until we are willing to follow it again. And if you have ever wondered whether your own heart should continue believing after everything life has placed in your path, let these words remind you of something important. The deepest roots grow in places no one can see. Long before a tree reaches toward the sky, it spends countless seasons strengthening itself beneath the surface. Perhaps our story has been living in such a season all along. Invisible growth is still growth. Silent healing is still healing. Hidden hope is still hope. Today I no longer fear what tomorrow may bring because I finally understand that peace does not come from controlling the future. Peace comes from becoming truthful in the present. Whatever happens next, I will carry that truth with gratitude instead of fear. And if our paths truly were meant to cross again, then when that moment arrives, you will not meet the frightened person who once hid behind silence. You will meet someone who learned that the greatest mistake is never loving too deeply, it is allowing fear to convince you that love should remain forever unspoken. That mistake ends here, because from this moment forward, every step I take will be guided not by what I am afraid to lose, but by what I am finally brave enough to protect. And now, after everything that has remained unspoken for so long, I find myself standing at the edge of a brand new beginning. Not because every question has been answered, and not because every fear has disappeared, but because I finally understand something I spent far too many years trying to ignore. The greatest mistake was never loving someone so deeply. The greatest mistake was believing that silence could protect a heart that was created to speak the truth. I know now that every delayed conversation, every unfinished memory, every restless night and every quiet prayer slowly led me to this very moment. None of it was meaningless. None of it was wasted. Every season shaped me into someone who finally understands that real love is not measured by how loudly it announces itself, but by how faithfully it survives every storm without asking for recognition. Through every chapter of uncertainty, one truth remained unchanged. My heart never forgot you. It simply waited until fear no longer had the final word. I often imagined what I would say if this moment ever arrived. I believed I would need perfect words, perfect timing, or perfect certainty. But standing here now, I realize none of those things matter as much as honesty. The heart has its own language, one that cannot be improved by rehearsed speeches or polished promises. It simply asks to be heard. So let these words come exactly as they are. If I ever made you question your worth because of my silence, I am sorry. If my hesitation ever made you believe you were forgotten, I am sorry. The distance between us was never created by a lack of feeling. It was created by my own fear of losing something precious before I even understood how precious it truly was. Today I choose differently. I choose openness instead of hiding. I choose truth instead of assumptions. I choose courage instead of regret. And whatever tomorrow brings, I will never again allow fear to speak louder than my heart. Looking back, I no longer see our journey as a collection of missed opportunities. I see it as a path of quiet transformation. Every delay taught patience. Every disappointment revealed hidden strength. Every unanswered question invited deeper faith. Even the moments that felt like endings became silent beginnings I could not recognize at the time. Life has a remarkable way of preparing us through seasons we do not understand until much later. Perhaps that is why our story unfolded the way it did. We needed time to become the people capable of protecting what once frightened us. We needed to heal wounds neither of us caused alone. We needed to discover that genuine love grows stronger when it is rooted in truth instead of fear. I no longer resent the waiting because I finally understand its purpose. Waiting refined my heart. It taught me that meaningful connections are never built upon rushing, forcing, or controlling outcomes. They are built through trust, honesty, compassion, forgiveness, and quiet faith that what is truly meant to remain will always find its way back into the light. If these words have reached you today, perhaps they are not reaching you by accident. Perhaps they have arrived because your own heart has been searching for peace just as mine has. Maybe you have carried questions no one else could answer. Maybe you have wondered whether hope was becoming too difficult to hold on to. If so, let this be the reminder you needed. Never allow temporary darkness to convince you that the sun has disappeared forever. Dawn always arrives quietly. It does not ask permission before filling the horizon with light. In the same way, healing often begins before we realize it has already started. Sometimes the first sign of healing is simply finding the courage to believe again. I believe again. I believe that kindness is never wasted. I believe that forgiveness frees the one who offers it as much as the one who receives it. I believe that honesty creates peace even before it creates answers. Most importantly, I believe that every soul deserves the chance to live without carrying the unbearable weight of words left forever unsaid. That is why I refuse to remain silent any longer. Whatever the future holds, I have finally given my heart permission to speak. There is an unexpected peace that comes from telling the truth without trying to control the outcome. That peace cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed from someone else. It can only be discovered when we stop hiding from ourselves. I feel that peace now. The fear that once seemed so powerful has become only a distant echo, reminding me how much life can change when one honest decision replaces 1,000 fearful excuses. If destiny allows our paths to cross again, I hope we meet not as two people haunted by old misunderstandings but as two souls who learned the value of truth through every difficult season they survived. I hope we greet one another with gratitude instead of regret, with compassion instead of hesitation, and with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing nothing important remains hidden between us. But even if life chooses a different path, I will carry no bitterness. I have already received something priceless. I have learned that love, in its purest form, changes us forever. It teaches us to become more patient, more forgiving, more courageous, and more aware of the light that exists even during life's darkest nights. Those lessons will remain with me wherever I go. They are gifts no distance can take away. So as these words come to their final page, I leave you with one last truth. Do not measure your life by the opportunities you feared losing. Measure it by the courage you discovered when you finally decided to live honestly. Do not allow yesterday's silence to define tomorrow's possibilities. Every sunrise carries the invitation to begin again. Every heartbeat reminds us that hope is still alive. Every breath is proof that another chapter can still be written. And if, somewhere ahead, our stories meet once more, then let that meeting begin not with fear, not with doubt, and not with the weight of everything left unsaid, but with quiet gratitude for every lesson that prepared us for that moment. Until then, I release every regret, every hidden fear, and every burden I carried for too long. I choose peace. I choose truth. I choose hope. And wherever life leads from this day forward, one thing will remain forever unchanged. Thank you for unknowingly teaching me that the strongest light is not the one that appears when everything is easy. The strongest light is the one that continues shining even after walking through the darkest night. That light will guide every step I take from this moment on, and with a heart finally free of silence, I move toward tomorrow believing that whatever is guided by truth will always arrive exactly where it is meant to be. This is not a goodbye. It is simply the end of one chapter and the quiet beginning of another, written with honesty, carried by hope, and entrusted to the future with complete peace.